Welcome back to the deep dive, everyone. Today we're gonna try to tackle a pretty big topic, I think.
Yeah,
We're gonna dive into martial arts.
it's a big one.
And for this one, we have martial arts for dummies.
A classic.
Yeah, a classic. And I think our goal today is to really try to condense this down because this is thick.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of information. So if you're out there listening and you've ever been curious about martial arts, maybe you wanted to give it a shot, or even if you already train, hopefully we can break down some of this into something that's a little bit more digestible.
Yeah, it's a really comprehensive guide. It covers so much. We've got history, philosophy, the different styles like karate and kung fu and taekwondo and judo, aikido. I mean, we could go on and on and on.
Escrima.
Escrima, Hapkido, kickboxing, Jeet Kune, Tai Chi. It even goes into weapons and training and how to find a school and everything.
Yeah, and it's not just fighting. That's one of the things that I think is so interesting about martial arts. When we say martial arts, people instantly think of, UFC or, Jean-Claude Van Damme kicking somebody in the face.
Right, or breaking boards.
Yeah, breaking boards. But this book really gets into that kind of balance of mind, body, and spirit.
Absolutely.
And so that's kind of what we're hoping to do today is give you a little bit of a taste of everything, a little bit of the flavor of all of it. So really the best place to start is, I think, to kind of define the term itself. What are martial arts?
Yeah, I think the book really hits this home right away. It's more than just the fighting techniques, the kicks and flips and all that stuff. It's really about pursuing a healthy life. It's about finding a balance between your mind and your body and your spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. It talks about discipline and perseverance, which I think are words that probably make most people cringe.
Right. And it takes work. It takes dedication.
Yeah.
And it even says at one point, the idea of breaking a concrete block with your bare hand might seem a little insane,
Yeah.
but maybe there's a little insanity in all of us that we need to tap into.
Well, I think that kind of goes into what the book talks about with overcoming fear and, pushing your boundaries and being open to new ideas.
Absolutely.
And so yeah, the book really frames it as kind of this pursuit of self-improvement and personal evolution.
It is.
Huh?
And it can give you the courage to pursue goals that you might have thought were just completely out of reach.
Interesting. So it sounds like it's not just about punching and kicking. There's a lot more going on here. But where did it all start? Where did martial arts actually come from?
Well, the book kind of traces this origin all the way back to India.
Really?
Yeah.
I always thought it was China.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think of, China, the Shaolin monks.
The Shaolin Temple.
But it seems like it actually originated in India and spread eastward over centuries, influencing, different traditions in China, Japan, Korea, all over.
Okay. So that whole Shaolin monk thing, is that just like a Hollywood thing, or is there some truth to that?
Well, there's a legend about a monk named Bodhidharma. He was an Indian monk, and he lived, somewhere around the 5th or 6th century AD. And he's actually credited with founding Zen Buddhism.
Oh, wow.
So he was traveling around spreading his teachings, and he also instructed the monks that he met in physical exercises. So some people think that maybe that was like a very early form of yoga or something like that. And he eventually made it to the Shaolin Temple in China.
So that's how it got to the Shaolin Temple.
That's the legend, yeah. Now, historians, they kind of debate exactly how much Bodhidharma had to do with the actual martial arts part of it.
Sure.
But they do think that he brought some physical practices with him that probably contributed to their later development.
Okay, so there's some truth to it.
Definitely. And there's no doubt that the Shaolin Temple became like this major hub for martial arts. It's kind of where it all started to come together, evolve.
Yeah, and then from there just kind of spread out, branched out. So that's why we have so many different styles today.
Yeah, all those different cultures, they took those basic ideas and they infused them with their own philosophies, their own techniques, even spiritual beliefs.
So it really is diverse. It's not just one thing.
Not at all. It's incredibly diverse.
Okay, so let's say somebody out there is listening to this and they think, you know what, I want to try martial arts. Where do they even begin? How do you choose a style? How do you find a school? Because that seems really important.
Absolutely. And the book actually recommends you start with yourself.
Okay.
Start with some self-reflection. What's your current fitness level?
Right.
What are your goals? Are there any physical issues you need to be aware of? Like, bad knees, bad back, anything like that.
Yeah, you don't want to injure yourself further.
Right. And it actually says you should talk to your doctor before starting any new exercise program.
Always good advice.
Always good advice.
Yeah.
But even before you go and pick a school, even before you know what style you want to do, you can start preparing your body.
How so?
Well, the book recommends doing some light stretches, a couple times a day.
Yeah.
Maybe go for a brisk walk every now and then to build up that stamina.
Yeah, so just kind of get yourself moving a little bit.
Exactly. Get those muscles working, get that blood flowing. Think of it like warming up the engine before a long drive.
I like that analogy. Okay, so we talked about all these different styles. One of the things I always find interesting is those animal motifs you see. Like every school's got a tiger or a dragon or, whatever. What's the story behind that?
I thought that was interesting too. And the book kind of explains that, especially in Chinese martial arts, those animal motifs, they're not just decorative. They represent different qualities that the practitioners are trying to embody.
So like what would a tiger represent?
Well, a tiger might represent, power,
Sure.
aggression,
Strength.
strength.
Mm-hmm.
A monkey could be agility and speed.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And some animals, like the lion, they might represent the actual spirit of a school or the essence of their style.
Oh, so it's almost like their mascot.
Yeah, kind of like that.
That's cool. So there's a lot of symbolism and I guess philosophy tied into this too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of deep philosophy in martial arts. And the book, it highlights a couple of core concepts that are really important to understand.
Okay, like what?
So the first one is qi. You might also hear it called ki or ki, depending on the style.
Yeah, I've heard those terms before.
Yeah, it's basically your life force, that energy that flows through you. In martial arts, it teaches you how to cultivate this energy, through breathing techniques, focus. Sometimes they even have these vocalizations like the kai or ki hop.
So it's like harnessing your inner power.
Exactly. And then another key concept is yin yang,
Ah, yes. The balance.
the balance. It's this idea that everything's made up of these opposite but interconnected forces. Hot and cold, light and dark, hard and soft. And understanding that balance, that harmony, that's really important for martial artists. It helps them, not just in their techniques, but in their whole life,
So it's about finding that equilibrium.
finding that center. Yeah.
Now, going back to choosing a style, you were talking about not jumping around too much.
Right. The book actually advises against, being like a grasshopper, just hopping from one style to another.
You got to pick one and stick with it.
Yeah. You want to pick one and you want to stick with it at least until you have a good foundation. Maybe until you get to like black belt level.
Okay.
Because then you can actually see if maybe another style would complement what you've already learned.
Right. So you need to really understand one before you can move on to another one.
And the book, it stresses that real mastery takes a lot of work, a lot of consistent training. It's that hard training that builds not just strength, but also mental toughness, self-confidence. You really start to understand your capabilities, but also your limitations.
Yeah. I guess that makes sense. You can't be a master of everything.
Exactly. And then there's the question of competition.
Oh, yeah, because some martial arts are very competition focused and some are not.
Right. And the book points out that different styles have different views on competition. Some really encourage it.
Yeah.
They think it's great for testing your skills and pushing yourself. And then others, they focus more on personal growth, and they might actually discourage competition.
So it really depends on what you're looking for.
It really depends on what you're looking for and what the school you choose kind of believes in.
Now, the book also talks about the tenets of Taekwondo and how those can actually build character. Can you explain what those are?
Yeah, so there are 5 tenets: courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, and indomitable spirit. And they're kind of meant to be guiding principles, not just for fighting, but for life in general.
It sounds almost like a code of conduct.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, courtesy means showing respect to your instructors, your fellow students. Indomitable spirit, that's about staying positive and resilient, no matter what challenges you face.
Yeah, I mean, those are good qualities to have. It's not just about the fighting, it's about being a good person.
Exactly. It's about the whole person.
Yeah.
And it goes even deeper than that. There's the philosophical influences, like Taoism in Chinese martial arts.
Ah, Taoism.
Yeah. So a lot of Chinese martial arts, they have this Taoist foundation.
Yeah.
And that emphasizes things like humility, inner focus, self-discipline.
So there's a lot of mental training involved as well.
Oh, absolutely. The mental game is huge in martial arts.
Okay. And the book talks about Fudoshin. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, Fudoshin. That's a cool concept. It comes from Japanese martial arts, and it basically means having an unwavering spirit.
Unwavering spirit.
Yeah, so like being able to stay calm, even under pressure, when you're facing a threat or a difficulty.
So like not panicking.
Exactly, not panicking. Reacting with clarity instead of just, going into fight or flight.
So it's about being in control of your emotions.
Exactly. Maintaining that inner balance no matter what's happening around you.
That's a good skill to have in any situation, really.
Absolutely.
So let's say somebody is listening and they're thinking, okay, this sounds interesting. I want to learn more. Where do they even start? How do they find information about different styles and schools?
Oh, there are martial arts magazines.
So yeah, like Black Belt and all that.
Yeah, Black Belt, Taekwondo Times. They have good information. But, the book kind of warns you. It says, be careful about those classified ads.
Oh, yeah, right. Everyone claims to be the best.
Yeah, everybody's the ultimate master.
So take it with a grain of salt.
Definitely. And then, of course, there's the internet.
Oh, yeah, the internet.
That's a wealth of information. You can find, websites for schools, for organizations, for individual instructors. But the book warns you, don't get lost in the internet black hole.
Right. Don't just research forever.
Yeah, you actually have to go out there and do it.
You have to take a class.
Take a class. And it also mentions those mixed martial arts videos, the USC stuff. It says, those can be fun to watch, but they're not really representative of typical martial arts training.
Right. So don't expect to go in and be Conor McGregor right away.
Yeah, it's a different world.
Okay, so you find a school online, maybe you've seen some videos, you're kind of interested. What's next?
Well, the book really stresses that you cannot learn martial arts just from books and videos.
Yeah, you need a teacher.
You need an instructor. You need that hands-on guidance, that feedback.
Somebody to correct you when you're doing it wrong.
Absolutely. Somebody who can show you the proper techniques. And the book gives you some tips on how to actually find a good school.
Okay, like what?
Well, you can look for traditional martial arts schools. Sometimes they're called a dojo. Sometimes they're called a dojang, depending on the style.
Okay.
Sometimes you might find smaller groups that meet in people's homes, community centers. Maybe your local Parks and Rec department has a program. Sometimes universities have martial arts clubs.
So there's a lot of options out there.
There are. And when you're considering different styles, think about what you like. Are you more into kicking and punching? Or are you more interested in grappling, like judo?
I guess that makes sense.
And your level of fitness, your age, those are all factors too.
So you've got a list of schools. What do you do next? Do you just pick the closest one and sign up?
Not quite. The book really recommends taking the time to interview the instructors, to actually talk to them, maybe talk to some of the students.
So get a feel for the place.
Get a feel for the place, see what their philosophy is, what do they emphasize, what do they think are the main benefits of their style. And then the book also says, see if you can observe a sparring session.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, because then you can see how much contact is involved.
Yeah. See if it's something you're comfortable with.
Right. Because some schools are no contact, some are light contact, some are full contact.
Big difference.
Big difference.
Yeah.
And, the book really makes the point that choosing the right school, it's almost more important than the style.
Interesting. Why is that?
Well, because the quality of instruction, the environment, that's really going to make or break your experience.
Okay. So what makes a good martial arts school then?
Well, according to the book, it should be clean. It should have the right equipment. It should have separate changing rooms for men and women. And the instructors, they should really create an environment of courtesy and respect, make it a safe and supportive place to learn.
Yeah, it shouldn't feel intimidating.
No, not at all. And there should be a good camaraderie among the students. It should feel like a community. And it should be welcoming to everybody.
So no matter your age or your fitness level or your background, everybody should feel welcome. Now, what are some questions you should ask yourself before you even go into a school?
Oh, yeah, the book has a bunch of good questions. Like, what are your goals? What do you want to get out of this? What are your expectations for the training? How much time can you actually commit?
Yeah, that's important.
And how do you like to learn? Do you learn by watching, by listening, by doing?
So figure out your learning style.
Yeah, figure out your learning style.
Yeah, what about the instructor themselves? What makes a good instructor?
Well, the book says a good instructor, they take teaching seriously, they motivate their students, but they don't put them down, they don't make fun of them.
Yeah, you don't want somebody yelling at you.
No, nobody wants that. And they demonstrate the techniques. They correct you when you're doing it wrong, they answer your questions, and they make everybody feel valued.
Yeah, it's almost like they're a mentor.
Yeah, it's a mentorship relationship.
Okay. So when you're actually at a school, looking around, what should you be paying attention to?
Well, first, look at the space itself. Is it clean? Does it have the right equipment? Is the flooring safe? And what's the student-to-teacher ratio?
So not too many students per teacher.
Right. You want to make sure you're getting enough attention. And then really observe the classroom. How formal is it? How disciplined are the students? How do they interact with each other, with the instructor? Are they allowed to ask questions?
Yeah, so get a sense of the vibe.
Exactly. Get a sense of the vibe. And the book really recommends trying an introductory lesson.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, because most schools will offer like a free or a low-cost introductory lesson. That way you can try it before you commit.
See if you like it.
See if you like it, see if it's a good fit.
Okay, so we've talked about all this stuff about choosing a school, finding an instructor, all that. But what about the cost? Because
Right.
martial arts, it's not free.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good point. And the book, it emphasizes that there is a financial commitment involved.
Yeah.
And you need to understand what that is before you start. Different schools have different payment structures. Some have annual contracts, some have monthly fees, some even charge per class.
Okay. So you need to figure out what works for you.
Exactly. Figure out what works for you and understand what's included, what the policies are, if, something happens and you have to stop training for a while.
What's a typical range for like monthly tuition?
Well, the book gives a range of about $30 to $70 a month.
Okay.
But that's just a general estimate.
Sure.
In big cities, it could be much higher. If you have a really famous instructor, it could be higher. Private lessons are always going to be more expensive.
Makes sense.
But the book also says, ask about discounts. Some schools will give you a discount if you pay for a year up front. Some have special offers for new students.
Good to know.
And don't forget the uniform.
Yeah, you usually have to buy a uniform.
Yeah, and sometimes other gear too.
So it adds up.
It adds up.
Okay, so you've chosen a school, you signed up, you're ready to start. What can you expect as a complete beginner?
Well, the book acknowledges that it can be challenging to start something new, especially if you're used to being good at things. You're going to be a beginner again.
It's humbling.
It is humbling.
Yeah.
But the book says it's important to embrace that beginner's mindset. Be open to learning, and don't get discouraged if you feel awkward at first.
Yeah, everybody starts somewhere.
Everybody starts somewhere. And to help stay motivated, you need to set goals.
What kind of goals should a beginner have?
Well, the book recommends a mix of short-term goals and long-term goals. So short-term goals could be things like going to class every week, getting through your first lesson without feeling completely lost, maybe memorizing a basic form or a stance.
Okay, so small steps.
Small steps.
Yeah.
Long-term goals could be things like, increasing your strength, losing weight, maybe eventually earning your black belt.
Those are good goals.
But the key is to make those goals realistic. You want them to be challenging, but achievable.
You don't want to set yourself up for failure.
Right. And then to actually achieve those goals, you need to break them down into smaller steps.
Okay.
So instead of saying, I want to learn this whole form, maybe you say, okay, this week I'm going to focus on mastering these 2 moves.
Yeah, break it down into manageable chunks.
Exactly. And then use markers to track your progress. If you're trying to lose weight, weigh yourself every week and understand what to expect during those belt tests.
Oh, yeah, the belt tests.
Those can be nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But if you know what's coming, what techniques they're going to ask you to do, what forms, maybe there's some sparring, some terminology, even some cultural stuff. If you know what to expect, it can be a lot less stressful.
Yeah, preparation is key.
Preparation is key.
Okay, so we talked about goals. We talked about finding a school. What about the actual training itself? What do you wear? What kind of equipment do you need?
So the uniform, that's pretty standard. Depending on the style, it might be called a dobo, a gi, a dobok. Some schools might let you start out in just workout clothes and barefoot.
Okay.
But a lot of styles, you'll need that uniform.
Yeah.
And then for shoes, some styles have special martial arts shoes.
I've seen those.
But a lot of times you train barefoot.
Barefoot.
Barefoot helps you connect with the ground, build foot strength.
I can see that.
And then there's protective gear. So a mouth guard, that's essential.
Yeah. Don't want to lose any teeth.
No, you don't want to lose any teeth. And a groin protector for men, that's highly recommended.
Definitely a good idea.
Definitely a good idea. And then as you get more advanced, as you start sparring, you might want to get some other gear too, like headgear, chest protector, foot protectors, shin guards.
So you don't get beat up too badly.
Exactly. It's all about safety.
Okay. What about if you want to train at home? Is there any equipment that you recommend for that?
Well, first of all, you need a safe space.
Okay.
Clear floor space where you can move around,
Yeah.
stretch. And then if you want to build strength, you can get some free weights. A heavy bag is really good for almost any style. It helps you work on your power, your stamina, your coordination.
I've always wanted a heavy bag.
Yeah, they're fun. And then there's some more specialized stuff. Rebreakable boards, stretching machines, even a Wing Chun dummy if you're into that.
Okay, so you can really trick out your home gym.
Oh, yeah. And the book even says, look through martial arts magazines. You'll get lots of ideas.
Okay, good advice. Now, one thing that I think a lot of people worry about is getting hurt, especially when they're first starting out. Is martial arts dangerous?
You know, that's a valid concern,
Mm-hmm.
but the book actually says that when it's taught and practiced correctly, martial arts is pretty safe compared to a lot of other activities.
Really?
Yeah. The most common injuries are, strains, sprains, bumps, bruises, kind of like what you'd get playing, tennis or something.
So nothing too serious.
Yeah. But the key is to prevent those injuries in the first place.
And how do you do that?
Well, the book stresses the importance of warming up.
Always a good idea.
Always a good idea. Light cardio, dynamic stretches before you start,
Mm-hmm.
and then cool down and stretch afterwards. And stay hydrated, drink lots of water. And this is important. Listen to your body.
Yeah.
Don't push yourself too hard, especially when you're starting out.
You don't want to overdo it.
You don't want to overdo it.
Yeah.
And learn the proper techniques. Because if you're doing things wrong, that's when you get hurt.
Yeah.
And be mindful of your partner during practice, especially when you're doing throws and things like that. You don't want to hurt them, and you don't want them to hurt you.
So communication is important.
Communication is key.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, wear the protective gear.
Always wear the gear.
Always wear the gear.
Okay, so you're training consistently, you're being safe, you're not pushing yourself too hard. How do you get the most out of your training?
Well, the book, it really emphasizes consistency.
So, showing up regularly.
Showing up regularly. And even practicing outside of class. Even if it's just, reviewing techniques, doing some light stretching. The book says it takes about 6 weeks to form a habit.
So make it part of your routine.
Make it part of your routine. And then there's the mental side. You need the right attitude.
The right attitude. Okay, so what does that mean?
Well, the book talks about having heart, being passionate about learning, having an open mind, being willing to try new things, let go of any preconceptions you might have, and be a good listener. Listen to your instructors, listen to your partners, and be persistent.
Don't give up.
Don't give up, because mastering a technique, that can take thousands of repetitions.
Wow.
Yeah, it's about building that muscle memory. It has to become instinct.
So it's about dedication.
It's about dedication, yeah.
Now, what about things like your diet and your sleep? Do those affect your training?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The book, it talks about eating sensible meals.
Healthy eating.
Healthy eating. Don't eat a big meal right before training. Make sure you have healthy snacks. And stay hydrated. Water is your best friend.
Lots of water.
Lots of water.
Mm-hmm.
And get enough sleep. Your body needs to rest. It needs to recover. And it even suggests talking to a registered dietitian if you have, special dietary needs or goals.
So get some professional advice if you need it.
Yeah. And be careful about those supplements. Don't just take anything without talking to a professional.
Yeah, that's good advice. Now, the book also talks about supplemental training. What does that mean?
So supplemental training, that's stuff you do outside of class to improve your fitness and your performance.
Like cross-training.
Yeah, kind of like cross-training. So the book recommends cardiovascular training.
So like running, swimming, biking.
Exactly. At least 3 hours a week. And then flexibility training.
Stretching.
Stretching. You got to stretch. You got to be able to move.
Okay.
And then speed training.
So you can react quickly.
React quickly, move explosively, and then strength training.
So lifting weights.
Lifting weights, body weight exercises, core work, all of that is going to make you a stronger, more powerful martial artist.
Okay, so it's not just about the time you spend in class, it's also about what you do outside of class.
It all adds up.
Now, I think a lot of people get into martial arts for self-defense.
Absolutely. That's a big motivator.
Yeah. So what are some of the key things to know about self-defense?
Well, the book makes it very clear that self-defense is different from, sport martial arts.
Right.
It's not about winning a trophy. It's about staying safe. And it's not just about techniques. It's about awareness. It's about making good decisions. It's about having a plan.
Okay, so be prepared.
Be prepared. And adapt those techniques to your own body, to your own clothing.
Yeah.
What works in a uniform might not work in jeans and a T-shirt.
Right. So you need to be realistic.
Realistic, yeah.
Yeah.
And be aware of your surroundings. Notice who's around you, what potential dangers there might be.
Situational awareness.
Situational awareness, yeah. And trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. The book even suggests thinking like a criminal.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, think about where they might target, what they might do. And then you can avoid those situations. Like, look in your car before you get in. Don't be distracted by your phone when you're walking alone. Have your keys ready.
Simple things.
Simple things. But they can make a big difference. And if you feel threatened, react quickly. Get out of there. Call for help. Don't hesitate.
Okay, so be proactive.
Be proactive.
The book also talks about 3 levels of self-defense.
Right. So the first level is awareness and avoidance. That's always your primary goal.
Don't get into a situation in the first place.
Exactly. If you can avoid a conflict, that's the best way to win.
Oh, okay. What's the second level?
The second level is verbal assertiveness.
So, using your words.
Using your words. Set boundaries, let the person know you're not going to be a victim.
And the third level.
The third level is physical self-defense. But that should only be a last resort.
If there's no other option.
If there's no other option. And the book gives you some examples of basic techniques, like how to escape from a wrist grab, how to escape from a shoulder grab, how to deliver a groin kick.
Oh, that's effective.
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah.
But the goal is always to create an opening so you can get away.
Get away safely.
Get away safely.
Now, some people might want to take their training further and actually compete.
Absolutely. And the book covers that too. But it also recognizes that competition isn't for everyone.
Right.
Some styles and some individuals, they focus more on personal development, and that's totally fine.
So it's a personal choice.
It is. But for those who do want to compete, it can be really beneficial. It helps you hone your skills, test your techniques, set goals.